dovetails with what Nomi Prins has been talking about. And, of course, her latest book is It Takes a Pillage, Behind the Bonus, Bailouts, and Backroom Deals from Washington to Wall Street. And, of course, she's also the author of Other People's Money, The Corporate Mugging of America. She wrote that 6.5 years ago in October of 2004, a devastating expose into corporate corruption, political collusion, and Wall Street deception. That's why the big mega banks and the insiders want big government, because they can shut down their competition. Before becoming a journalist, Nomi worked in Wall Street as a managing director at Goldman Sachs and running the international analytics group at Bear Stearns in London. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, Fortune, Newsday, Mother Jones, The Daily Beast, Newsweek, Slate.com, The Guardian UK, The Nation, American Prospect, Alternet. The list goes on. And NomiPrins.com is her website. Links to that up on Infowars.com. It is great to have you here with us, Nomi.
Well, it's great to be on the show, Alex. I've been listening to you for a long time, and it's really great to be on. Thank you. Well,
we're honored to have you. You heard me just getting into the power plants being shut down that aren't insiders with the government. That pretty much integrates with what you've been talking about this rigged, planned, insider, crony capitalist system. What's your take before we get into the larger issues on these power plants being shut down from Georgia to Texas and now blackouts everywhere?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, that what you're talking about, what he was talking about, is that if you don't have the money to effectively create your own loophole and work it out with the government, is as one of the larger power companies like a GE, then you're going to not be able to operate. And as a result, it consolidates the power, no pun, actually pun intended, into a handful of a few companies, which is pretty much how corporate America works. We are a nation in which the corporations have continued to merge, have continued to consolidate power and therefore control and access to government and collusion with the government in order to, yes, get rid of competition and also control markets. And whether those markets are with power or those markets are with finances or those markets are with loans to homeowners, it's all really part of a system where companies really not just control, but are gaining every day more control over all the things that touch our lives.
Absolutely. And this is a rigged system, and that's what the globalists admit at Davos they want, is a global system they control, where they control the rules for their advantage. And from my perspective, it's purely a mafia tactic. What would you call this system?
Well, it is, you talk about the mafia as, say, extracting money from various small businesses in order to have garbage pickup, in front of their businesses, and then the list, of course, goes on and on. But effectively, they're extracting income in order to basically control a certain set of practices. And the United States government does really the same thing, except it goes through the form of lobbyists and campaign contributors. So basically, the bigger a company is, the more they can pay for lobbyists, the more they can pay for lawyers, for accountants, for everyone else to not just create laws, but get around laws and find their own loopholes and basically suggest laws that have loopholes in them for them to use, and they have the funds to do that. And, we still have a system where the Supreme Court is fine with that. Recently, confirm the fact that they're fine with campaign contributions coming through corporations. Obviously, lobbyists are going in and out of Washington, and in many instances, like with the head of GE now, they don't even have to, it's not even really an issue. They're just on the advisory board of the Obama administration, and it's not just the Obama administration, of course, it's any administration, it's just the one that's currently operating. And that's really how the money not just gets consolidated on the profit of these companies, but gets used to infiltrate our laws, create their own loopholes, and facilitate their own future profits because of that.
Nomi, I could talk to you as a former Goldman Sachs managing director for 10 hours. There's so many things to discuss, but on your radar screen right now, I saw you on Max Kaiser a few days ago. It's actually going to air tomorrow, but he played an exclusive clip here of you basically saying, yeah, this is insider trading just with or borders on it with the Facebook Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan deal. There's a lot of different deals that are going on right now. But what is most important on your radar screen that you want to warn people about, being somebody who's been an insider and really knows how things work?
Well, I think yeah, you mentioned the Facebook deal, and that's only important because it just demonstrates how Goldman Sachs, after having created itself into a bank holding company, basically the type of a bank that is supposed to administer deposits for its customers, to provide loans for its customers, those customers not being millionaires, of course, but being regular individuals, which aren't the customers of Goldman Sachs. However, the name of it as a bank holding company, which it became in the fall of 2008, enabled it to have federal support from the Fed, from the Treasury Department, from the FDIC, and enabled it to carry on its trading with our support, with our federal support, which it should not be doing. And that's just an example of how a company uses the government when it needs the government in terms of funding it at the brink of a bankruptcy, which it stood at in the fall of 2008, and then says, you know, the heck with you guys, we're just going to go offshore, do what we want, raise money for our private deals, and if the SEC is going to ask us questions, we're just going to take them offshore and go somewhere where we don't have any questions, because those questions are annoying. They get in the way of us, you know, raising fees and gaining our profits, and we're just going to go around. And so you have this global system which enables companies like Goldman, like Morgan Stanley, like JP Morgan, like any international conglomerate, to find the place where the regulations are going to be weakest for that particular deal, that particular day, that particular practice in which they are going to be involved. And that's really a big problem with the system. Right now, for example, in Egypt, one of the things that I was looking at, and I'm by no means a Middle Eastern scholar, so I preface this with that, but a lot of the more recent economic problems that Egypt and other countries in the Middle East have been due to the fact that they have pursued opening their borders to international speculators and international capital and international banks buying up portions of their land and portions of their financial system. And of course, when international capital comes into a country, it's there for a bet. It's there for a short time. It's there to find the best hot deal, and it leaves as soon as it's not making a good return on its staying there. And that's what's happened to a large extent in Egypt in particular. Egypt was one of, according to the World Bank and the International Financial Corporation, which operates with the World Bank, one of the top 10 what they call reformers. Reformers to them are not reforming their country's economics for their citizens. They mean reforming their borders to allow speculative capital to come in and go out as freely as possible. And it was in their top 10 list for 4 out of the last 5 years. And the results, of course, when the worldwide depression started, is that the money that came in equally left as quickly, if not more so, leaving a lot of further economic devastation to the citizens of that country in its wake. And then that's besides the corrupt dictatorship and the regime that has been there for 29 years. But this is really the more recent effect of this global domination of international capital to just find itself wherever the borders are most amenable to that.
Nomi, you talk about the worldwide depression. I've had countless other prestigious economists on, and they've agreed that even Stiglitz 2-3 years ago, Nobel Prize winner, admitted we were going into a depression. By every yardstick, unemployment's 20+% here, 30% in California. The government lies and says it's 9.6, 9.7. As somebody who's been inside of the heart of Goldman Sachs, who's since then written and researched this, from your research, what's the real state of the world economy, and where are we headed?
The real state of the world economy is that individuals are finding themselves less able to make a living if they had a living, and falling into the poverty levels of their respective countries more and more quickly. And that's a direct result of trading and of bank capital and hedge funds and private equity funds finding spots and sort of pillaging them, to use the term of my book, but really pillaging whole economies for whether it's commodities, whether it's to churn a population into shady loans and to package those loans up into toxic assets and leave the waste to the Federal Reserve and the rest of the country. Those are things that the financial industry in particular, and the financial industry is part of every other industry. I mean, I focus on banks having been inside of banks, but there's no company, there's no large conglomerate that doesn't work with the large financial institutions to find ways around paying taxes, creating long sustaining jobs in the areas into which they infiltrate, because there's no need for them to do so. And so the state of the world is really captive to that type of international financial strategies that continue to get worse.
And there's
why. Sorry?
No, go ahead.
No, and that's why, you see in the Middle East, all of those countries have on record somewhere between 10 and 16% unemployment. But just like the United States, where we have on record, as you said, 9.4% right now unemployment, that does not in any way capture the underemployment, the jobs that are not sufficient to even cover health care or rent or rising costs of food and other types of commodities, because they just don't stretch as far, even when people have them. And so, if you look at the underemployment statistics, they're in double digits and rising. And that, coupled with the squeezing of prices and any type of commodity and any type of financial service or any type of service throughout the world, has the effect of squeezing people financially even further. And there's no barriers to that. The depression, the worldwide depression that started with what we call the crisis of 2008 was something that was really building up for many years for individuals not seeing jobs, seeing prices get too high.
Well, that's right. You predicted it in your 2004 book, and there's a method to this madness. These big central banks, who, of course, the shareholders are private central banks and families and shareholders, they are openly dollar devaluing worldwide, knowing that would cause record food prices, that then puts pressure on countries like Egypt. And then they offer the solution, now admitting that they sent in el-Baradi to start the revolt 2 weeks ago. So back when Stiglitz quit in 2002, we got those thousands of pages of IMF and World Bank documents that BBC reported on. And right there they said, once we get a country under our control, then we further bankrupt them, then there's riots, then that destroys confidence, then we can come in and buy up things even cheaper. Right. And so they have a real stake in the pillaging, putting the populations under their control into a servile position so they can come back and pillage them and basically, in a mercantile neo-colonial way, conquer them. What's the mindset of a Goldman Sachs? What's the mindset of these pillagers? What's their end-game strategy? Because now they're saying they openly want world government, a new global cashless currency that all of their currencies are denominated in, run by private central bankers.
Well, that's the private central banks are the friends of the international private banks, because they allow for easy funding to trade, and the motive for everything Goldman Sachs does is purely profit. It's not obviously doing God's work. It's not trying to create jobs. It's not trying to stick around in regions and actually have a fair economic system, meaning fair for the population of those particular regions. It's in to get a good deal, and it's in to get out, really, as soon as it can possibly do so, as soon as it's churned whatever that good deal is. I mentioned in a recent piece, actually I think on my blog, about, for example, in early 2008, when things were really getting obviously bad with the subprime lending and toxic asset creation on the back of that here in the United States, that there were UK arms, for example, of Goldman Sachs, buying up pieces of luxury real estate developers in Egypt, sort of trying to squeeze at that particular moment the last drops of what was the end of a real estate speculation boom, which will reboom again, but which now is in its lower stages. And so that's the mentality. Mentality is, where can I go? Where can I trade? Where can I get investors and fee them to trade with me in order to make as much as I can, as fast as I can?
And they're doing this.
A thought to what happens
Sure.
in the wake of that.